Most people don't fail because life is hard. They fail because they lose control of their emotions. They panic when pressure rises. They react when they should pause. They let feelings decide actions, and then they regret the results. Calm is not personality. Calm is not luck. Calm is a trained response. In this audiobook, you will learn how to stay steady when others fall apart, how to think clearly when emotions get loud, and how to build a mind that does not break under pressure. Because discipline doesn't ask how you feel, and neither does life. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. Stop reacting. Start responding. Most people think they're in control of their lives. They're not. They're in control of their reactions, and that's the problem. A reaction is fast. A reaction is emotional. A reaction happens before thought gets a seat at the table. And when you live in reaction mode, you don't live intentionally. You live defensively. You live at the mercy of whatever happens next. You have a choice. That's the key. Every moment gives you two paths: react or respond. A reaction is automatic. A response is deliberate. A reaction gives your power away. A response keeps it. Most people never learn the difference. They feel something and they obey it immediately. Anger shows up, they lash out. Fear shows up, they freeze. Ego shows up, they argue. That's not strength. That's conditioning. You were trained to react by stress, by noise, by people who benefit when you lose control. Calm people are not emotionless. That's a lie weak thinkers repeat. Calm people feel everything. They just don't let feelings drive the vehicle. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about directing it. That's the discipline. Here's the rule you will come back to again and again in this book. Pause, breathe, choose. Pause, because speed is what traps you. Breathe, because your body needs to stand down before your mind can step up. Choose, because you are not an animal running on instinct. You are a thinking human being. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Someone sends you an insulting message, a text, an email, a comment meant to poke you. Your heart rate jumps, your jaw tightens, your fingers hover over the keyboard. This is the moment where most people lose. They react. They fire back immediately. They escalate. They say something clever but costly. And now the situation owns them. Now they're angry all day. Now they're replaying the exchange in their head, all because they couldn't pause. But the calm person does something different. They pause. They breathe. They choose. They ask one simple question. Does responding right now give me power or take it? That's the key. Sometimes the strongest response is silence. Sometimes it's a measured reply. Sometimes it's no response at all. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to win every exchange. Because winning emotionally, often losing strategically. It's not about being right. It's about being in control. And control always beats impulse. Here's what most people don't realize. When you react, you teach others how to control you. They learn your buttons. They learn your triggers. They learn how to pull you off center. But when you respond instead of react, something powerful happens. You slow the moment down. You create space. And in that space, you reclaim authority. You have a choice. Always, even when emotions are loud, especially when emotions are loud. Let's be clear, this is not easy, and it's not supposed to be. Discipline never asks how you feel, it asks what you decide. That's why calm is rare, and that's why calm is powerful. Here's a practical rule you will use starting today. Never respond at the peak of emotion. Never. If your body is activated, your judgment is compromised. That's biology, not philosophy. So you delay, you breathe, you let the wave pass. Emotion is temporary. Regret lasts longer. Say that again. Emotion is temporary. Regret lasts longer. That's why calm people always seem one step ahead. They're not smarter, they're slower on purpose. They don't let moments rush them into mistakes. It's not about anger, it's about discipline. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. It's not about impulse, it's about discipline. You are not trying to eliminate emotion, you are training command over it. That distinction matters, because once you stop reacting, life changes. Arguments lose fuel, provocations lose power, chaos loses its grip, and something else happens too. You start trusting yourself, because you know, no matter what happens, you won't abandon your standards just to discharge a feeling. That's self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of calm. This chapter is your starting line. You are learning to slow the moment, to interrupt the pattern, to reclaim choice. Pause, breathe, choose. You don't need perfection, you need practice. And with repetition, calm becomes automatic. You mastered the first skill, control over reaction. Now it's time to understand what emotional control really is and what it is not.
Chapter 2. Emotional control is a skill, not a personality trait. Most people believe calm is something you're born with. They think some people are just wired differently, naturally composed, naturally unshakable. That belief is convenient, and it's wrong. Emotional control is not a personality trait. It's a skill, and like every skill, it is trained or neglected. You weren't born reactive. You were conditioned. Conditioned by urgency. Conditioned by constant stimulation. Conditioned by a world that rewards speed instead of clarity. So let's remove the excuse right now. You are not just an emotional person. You are an untrained one. That's the key. Once you understand this, responsibility shifts back to where it belongs, on you. And that's good news, because skills can be built. You have a choice. Look at people who remain calm under extreme pressure. Elite athletes, emergency responders, seasoned leaders. They don't stay composed because they feel less. They stay composed because they've practiced control more. They've repeated the same discipline under stress until it became automatic. Pressure didn't magically make them calm. Pressure revealed the training. It's not about temperament. It's about repetition. Say it again. It's not about temperament. It's about repetition. Most people only try to be calm when things are already falling apart. That's backwards. You don't train during the crisis. You perform during the crisis. Training happens when things are quiet, boring, uncomfortable. That's why most people avoid it. Emotional discipline looks unimpressive from the outside. No drama, no release, no instant gratification, just restraint, again and again. That's why it works. Let's talk about what emotional control actually is. It is not suppressing emotion. That creates pressure, and pressure always leaks. It is not pretending you don't care. That's denial, not strength. Emotional control is awareness plus delay. You notice what you feel, and you choose when or if you act on it. That delay is everything. That delay is where power lives. You have a choice, right there. Most people never develop that delay. Their feelings move straight to their mouth, straight to their fingers, straight to action. And then they blame the outcome on the emotion. No, the emotion wasn't the problem. The lack of discipline was. It's not about anger. It's about discipline. It's not about anxiety. It's about discipline. It's not about frustration. It's about discipline. Here's a practical reality check. If emotional control were a personality trait, it wouldn't improve with practice, but it does. If it were genetic, stress training wouldn't work.
but it does. If it were fixed, calm wouldn't be predictable, but it is when trained. Calm people aren't guessing, they're executing a pattern they've rehearsed. Pause, breathe, choose. They've said it 1,000 times before the moment ever arrived. That's why it shows up automatically. Now let's get specific. If you want emotional control, you must train 3 things. First, awareness. You must catch the emotion early, not after it hijacks you. Early signs matter. Tight shoulders, shallow breath, racing thoughts. That's your cue. Most people ignore these signals until it's too late. Then they say, "I just snapped." No, you drifted, then you reacted. Awareness is discipline. Second, interruption. You interrupt the emotional momentum. You change posture. You slow breathing. You stop speaking. Silence is not weakness here. Silence is leverage. This is where most people fail. They think interruption feels unnatural. Of course it does. You're breaking habit. Discipline always feels unnatural at first. That's the price. Third, repetition. You do it again and again and again. In traffic, in conversations, in small annoyances that don't matter. Because they do. You don't rise to the level of your intentions, you fall to the level of your training. That's the key. Train calm in small moments, or you won't have it in big ones. Let me make this uncomfortable, but honest. If you lose control regularly, it's because you haven't prioritized control. If you say, "That's just how I am," what you're really saying is, "I haven't trained myself yet." And that can change. You don't need their permission to improve. You don't need a new personality. You need a new standard. A standard that says, "I do not act at the mercy of my emotions." That standard will be tested. People will push. Life will provoke. Stress will apply pressure. Good. That's not a threat. That's feedback. Pressure shows you what still needs training. And instead of judging yourself, you adjust. That's discipline. Here's a rule to carry forward. Calm is built when nothing dramatic is happening. Not during explosions, not during confrontations, during ordinary moments where you feel slightly irritated, slightly bored, slightly uncomfortable. That's where mastery is forged. You pause when you don't feel like it. You breathe when no one is watching. You choose restraint when indulgence would be easier. And over time, something shifts. Your baseline changes. What used to trigger you now barely registers. What used to overwhelm you now feels manageable. Not because life softened, but because you hardened correctly. Calm is not fragility. Calm is preparedness. You have a choice. Train this skill or stay ruled by reactions. And now that you understand emotional control is learnable, something becomes impossible. You can no longer pretend you're powerless, because you're not. You're untrained, and training begins now. You stopped reacting, you started responding. Next, we take your power back from the people who try to provoke you.
Chapter 3. You don't need their permission to stay calm. Most people think other people control their emotions. They say things like, "He made me angry," "She stressed me out," "They pushed my buttons." That language exposes the problem. You're handing over authority. You're saying your inner state depends on someone else's behavior. That's not awareness. That's surrender. You don't need their permission to stay calm. That's the key. The moment you understand this, your entire relationship with people changes. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people benefit when you lose control. They provoke, they criticize, they poke, they test, not always consciously, but consistently. Why? Because emotional reactions give them leverage. When you react, they lead. When you explode, they steer. When you defend, they dictate the pace. Calm removes their advantage. You have a choice. Let's be clear, this is not about being passive, it's not about being agreeable, and it's not about letting people disrespect you. It's about refusing to let provocation decide your behavior. There is a difference. Most people confuse calm with submission. That's because they've only seen calm from people who are afraid. Real calm is not fear-based, it's control-based. And control is threatening to insecure people. Here's how this usually plays out. Someone questions you, publicly or privately, subtly or aggressively. Your ego tightens, your mind races. You want to correct them, put them in their place, prove something. That urge feels justified, but it's a trap. Because the moment you act from that place, you're no longer choosing, you're reacting. And once again, someone else set your direction. That's the pattern. Provocation, reaction, regret. Calm people break the chain. Pause, breathe, choose. They ask themselves, why would I give this person control over my state? That question alone restores power. Here's a real-world example. You're at work. A colleague makes a passive-aggressive comment, a subtle dig, enough to irritate but not enough to call out cleanly. Most people react emotionally. They snap back, they get sarcastic, they carry resentment all day. And the colleague, they win. They got inside your head. The calm person does something different. They don't rush to respond. They don't explain themselves. They don't perform for approval. They stay grounded. Sometimes they respond later. Sometimes they ask a neutral question. Sometimes they say nothing at all. And the dynamic shifts, because now the provocation has nowhere to land. You don't need their permission to disengage emotionally. You don't need their approval to maintain composure. You don't need to participate in every conflict you're invited to. That's the discipline. Here's the rule. If someone needs you emotional to feel powerful, deny them access. Silence can do that. Calm tone can do that. A measured response can do that. You are not obligated to match energy. That belief ruins people. Matching energy is how chaos spreads. Leading energy is how calm is established. And make no mistake, people notice. When you stop reacting, something interesting happens. Provocateurs escalate. At first, they try harder, they push more, they test boundaries. Why? Because they lost control over you and they want it back. That's the moment most people fold. They think, see, I should have reacted earlier. No, this is the moment you hold. This is where discipline is forged. You have a choice. You can return to the old pattern, or you can let the discomfort pass, because it will pass. Emotion always spikes before it fades. That's biology. People who stay calm understand this. People who don't panic at the peak. Here's another truth most people avoid. Not every challenge deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves defense. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Your time and attention are currencies. Spend them deliberately. It's not about weakness, it's about valuation. If someone cannot affect your long-term direction, they don't earn short-term emotion. That's the key. You don't need their permission to value yourself higher. Now, let's address the internal resistance you may be feeling right now. You might be thinking, if I don't react, they'll think they won. Let them. Winning emotionally is cheap. Winning strategically lasts. You are not trying to look strong. You are becoming strong. Strong enough to let things pass without chasing validation. Strong enough to choose peace over performance. Strong enough to understand that control is quiet. Here's a powerful reframe. Every time you stay calm under provocation, you train dominance over yourself, and self-dominance beats social dominance every time. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to explain it. You embody it. That's why calm people command respect without demanding it, because they are not needy for reactions. They are self-directed. It's not about ego. It's about discipline. It's not about winning arguments, it's about winning alignment. And alignment means your actions match your values, regardless of who's watching. Let me give you a tool. The next time someone provokes you, say this internally: "This moment is testing my discipline, not my worth." Say it again. "This moment is testing my discipline, not my worth." That sentence cuts the emotional cord, because most reactions come from perceived threat to identity. Remove that threat and the urgency disappears. You breathe, you slow down, you choose. You don't need their permission. You never did. And once you stop outsourcing your calm, something changes permanently. You stop feeling manipulated, you stop feeling drained, you stop feeling reactive, because you've reclaimed authorship over your internal state. You mastered reaction, you trained control, you reclaimed power from other people. Now it's time to face the final illusion, the belief that calm means you shouldn't feel anything at all. It doesn't. It means you feel everything and obey nothing.
Chapter 4. Feel everything. Obey nothing. Most people misunderstand emotional control. They think calm means numb. They think discipline means suppression. They think strength means pretending nothing affects you. That misunderstanding ruins them, because suppressed emotion doesn't disappear. It waits, it builds, and then it explodes at the wrong time, at the wrong person, for the wrong reason. That's not control. That's delay without direction. Real calm works differently. You feel everything, and you obey nothing. That's the key. Emotion is not the enemy. Obedience to emotion is. You have a choice. Every emotion that shows up is information, not instruction. Read that again. Emotion tells you something is happening. It does not tell you what to do about it. Most people skip that distinction. They feel anger and act angry. They feel fear and retreat. They feel insecurity and overcompensate. They mistake sensation for command. That's the flaw. Calm people separate feeling from behavior. They allow emotion to exist without letting it take control. That's discipline. Let's talk about anger, because it's the one people fear the most. Anger is not bad. Anger is energy. It points to boundaries, to values, to something that matters. But anger becomes destructive when it drives action without supervision. Untrained anger burns bridges. Trained anger builds standards. Same emotion, different discipline. You don't eliminate anger. You channel it. You feel it fully. You don't discharge it impulsively. Pause. Breathe. Choose. That pause is not avoidance, it's leadership. Fear works the same way. Fear isn't weakness. Fear is a signal. It says, pay attention. It says, this matters. But when fear controls behavior, it shrinks your world. You avoid, you hesitate, you settle. Not because you had to, but because you obeyed fear instead of managing it. Calm people feel fear and move anyway, not recklessly, deliberately. That's courage. And courage is not the absence of fear, it's refusal to let fear decide. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. Anxiety, same rule. Anxiety is anticipation without control. Your mind races ahead of reality, imagines outcomes, rehearses disasters. Most people get dragged along. Calm people slow the process. They bring attention back to the body, back to the breath, back to what is actually happening. Not tomorrow, not what if, now. You have a choice right there. You can spiral or you can ground. That's the training. Now let's address a dangerous mistake people make. They think feeling emotion means indulging it. It doesn't. Feeling means noticing without judgment. You don't dramatize it. You don't narrate it. You don't build stories around it. You observe it like weather. This is anger. This is fear. This is frustration. No commentary. No action yet.
Most people add fuel by labeling emotions as problems. I shouldn't feel this way. This is bad. This means something is wrong with me. That resistance amplifies the emotion. Calm comes faster when you stop fighting the feeling. You allow it to rise. You allow it to peak. You allow it to fall. Because emotions always fall if you don't feed them. That's biology. Here's a practical rule. Never make decisions at peak emotion. Never. Peak emotion distorts judgment, always. You don't quit at peak frustration. You don't confront at peak anger. You don't commit at peak excitement. You wait. That waiting is not weakness, it's wisdom. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable. Good. Discipline always feels uncomfortable before it feels empowering. That's the price of self-command. Let me give you a real-world scenario. You're in a heated conversation. Voices rise. Tension thickens. You feel the urge to interrupt, to defend, to strike back. That urge is emotion asking for obedience. This is where most people fail. The calm person notices the urge, names it internally, and delays action. They slow their breath, they soften their jaw, they listen fully, not because they agree, but because they refuse to surrender control. Then, when the emotion subsides, they speak. And when they speak, it lands, because it's measured, because it's intentional, because it's not reactive noise. That's power. Feeling everything doesn't make you volatile, it makes you precise. You become harder to manipulate, harder to rush, harder to provoke, because emotions no longer drive the wheel, you do. You don't need their permission to feel deeply. You don't need anyone's approval to pause. You don't need to justify restraint. It's not about being cold, it's about being directed. There's a reason calm people seem grounded even in chaos. They're not detached, they're anchored. Anchored in the understanding that emotion passes, but decisions echo. That's the key. Say it again. Emotion passes, decisions echo. So you feel fully, and you decide carefully. Here's the discipline to practice. When emotion arises, ask one question. What would the disciplined version of me do next? Not the angry version, not the scared version, the disciplined one. That question creates distance. Distance creates clarity, and clarity creates calm. You have a choice every time, and the more you practice this, the faster it becomes. What once took minutes takes seconds. What once felt forced feels natural, not because emotion disappeared, but because obedience did. You are not trying to be less human. You are becoming more intentional. That's mastery. You stopped reacting. You learned control. You reclaimed calm from other people. Now you understand emotions don't need to be silenced, only supervised. Next, we confront the moment that exposes everything, pressure. Because pressure doesn't create chaos, it reveals what you trained.
Chapter 5. Pressure reveals the untrained mind. Most people think pressure is the problem. They say things like, "I'd be calm if things weren't so stressful. I'll get control once life slows down." That's a lie they tell themselves. Pressure is not the enemy. Pressure is the mirror. It doesn't create behavior, it reveals it. That's the key. When pressure hits, whatever you've trained comes out. If you've trained discipline, you become steady. If you've trained avoidance, you panic. If you've trained impulse, you explode. Pressure doesn't make you worse, it shows you what's already there. You have a choice. Most people live their lives trying to avoid pressure. They seek comfort. They seek ease. They seek environments that don't challenge them. And then they're shocked when they collapse the moment things get hard. That's not bad luck. That's lack of preparation. Look at how people behave under stress. Financial pressure hits, and they make desperate decisions. Time pressure hits, and they rush and make mistakes. Social pressure hits, and they abandon their standards. Same person, different conditions. The problem wasn't pressure. The problem was training. Calm people don't wait for pressure to practice calm. They practice before it arrives, because pressure always arrives. Always. Here's the rule most people never learn. You don't rise to the level of your hopes. You fall to the level of your habits. That's the key. When pressure spikes, your conscious mind takes a step back. Your habits step forward. That's why stress feels like losing control. You didn't lose it, you revealed it. That's uncomfortable, but useful. Because once you see the pattern, you can train it. Most people don't want that responsibility. They want excuses. They blame deadlines. They blame people. They blame circumstances. But disciplined people do something different. They study their breakdowns. They ask, what came out of me under pressure? Irritability? Avoidance? Aggression? Indecision? No judgment, just data. Pressure is feedback. That's how calm is built. Let's talk about a common pressure point: money. Financial stress exposes emotional immaturity faster than almost anything. People overspend to escape discomfort. They make risky decisions to relieve anxiety. They avoid numbers because numbers trigger fear. That's not a money problem. That's an emotional control problem. The calm person faces the pressure directly. They don't rush. They don't numb. They don't dramatize. They breathe. They slow the moment. They choose the next correct action, even if it's uncomfortable. Especially if it's uncomfortable. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. Another pressure point: time. When time feels scarce, people show who they really are. They snap. They rush conversations. They cut corners. Why? Because urgency exposes impulse. Calm people respect time, but don't panic around it. They prioritize. They accept trade-offs. They let go of what can't be done well. They don't try to save everything. They choose what matters. That's discipline under pressure. Here's the hard truth. If pressure consistently turns you into someone you don't respect, the answer is not less pressure. It's more training. Training while things are calm. Training while stakes are low. Training when no one is watching. That's where most people quit, because training calm is boring. It doesn't feel heroic. It doesn't get applause. It just looks like restraint. And restraint is invisible until pressure hits. Then it's unmistakable. You have a choice. You can see pressure as punishment or preparation. Punishment leads to resentment. Preparation leads to mastery. That mindset shift changes everything. Pressure becomes the test you trained for, not the threat you fear. Let's make this practical. The next time pressure shows up, and it will, do this. First, name it. This is pressure. Not panic, not crisis. Pressure. Naming it reduces its power. Second, slow your body. Longer exhales. Relax your shoulders. Lower your voice. Your body leads your mind. Third, ask one question. What does discipline look like here? Not comfort, not relief. Discipline. That question cuts through emotion. It anchors you. Most people never ask it. That's why pressure owns them. Here's another truth you need to hear. Calm under pressure is a competitive advantage. In business, in relationships, in life. When others rush, you see clearly. When others panic, you think strategically. When others react, you respond. And over time, people notice. They trust you more. They rely on you more. They defer to you more. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Pressure reveals leaders, not loud leaders, stable ones. Now let's address the resistance.
You might be thinking, but I can't control how I feel under pressure. Correct, and irrelevant. You don't control feelings, you control behavior. That's the discipline. Calm is not emotional numbness under pressure. Calm is behavioral consistency under pressure. Say it again, behavioral consistency. You act according to your standards, not according to the stress level. That's the difference between trained and untrained minds. Untrained minds change with conditions. Trained minds hold the line. That's why pressure doesn't scare calm people. It validates them. It shows them their training works. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need approval to think clearly. You don't need perfect conditions to act with discipline. You have a choice. Every pressure-filled moment is asking you one question. Did you train for this, or did you avoid it? Now you know the answer is within your control. Pressure will keep coming. Deadlines, conflict, uncertainty. Good. That means you'll keep getting chances to prove who you are becoming. You've learned how to stop reacting. You've trained emotional control. You've reclaimed calm from people. You've learned to feel without obeying. Now you understand pressure is not the problem. Speed is. Because speed removes choice. And the next chapter is where most people lose control, the moment they rush.
Chapter 6. Slow down the moment before it controls you. Speed feels powerful. Fast decisions, fast responses, fast reactions. Most people confuse speed with strength. It's not. Speed is what steals choice, and when choice disappears, discipline disappears with it. That's the key. Every emotional mistake you've ever made had one thing in common. You moved too fast. You spoke before thinking. You decided before settling. You reacted before choosing. Speed didn't solve the problem. It created it. You have a choice. Life will rush you. People will pressure you. Moments will demand immediate action. But urgency is rarely real. It's usually manufactured, and untrained minds obey it automatically. Calm people don't. They slow the moment down on purpose, not externally, internally, because you can't always slow events, but you can always slow yourself. That's discipline. Let's be clear. Slowing down does not mean hesitating forever. It does not mean avoiding decisions, and it does not mean being indecisive. It means refusing to act before clarity arrives. That pause, sometimes only seconds long, is where control lives. Pause, breathe, choose. Say it again. Pause, breathe, choose. Most people skip the pause. That's why they live in cleanup mode, constantly fixing what they rushed into. Rushed words, rushed commitments, rushed emotions. Slow people don't apologize as much. They don't backtrack as often. They don't feel out of control as frequently. Not because they're perfect, because they're deliberate. Here's where speed gets dangerous. Speed feels productive. Speed feels decisive. Speed feels like leadership. But under emotional load, speed is recklessness in disguise. Anger plus speed equals damage. Fear plus speed equals retreat. Excitement plus speed equals regret. It's not about the emotion, it's about the pace. That's the discipline. Let's look at a common failure point: arguments. Arguments don't escalate because of disagreement. They escalate because of speed. One person speaks fast, the other interrupts. Tone rises, listening disappears. Now no one is responding, everyone is reacting. Calm people do something radical in these moments. They slow down their speech.
They shorten sentences. They leave space, not to manipulate, to regain control. Slower speech forces slower thought. Slower thought restores choice. That's the key. You don't win arguments by being faster. You win by being clearer, and clarity requires space. Now let's talk about decisions. Most bad decisions feel urgent at the time. Decide now. Act quickly. You'll miss your chance. That pressure is emotional leverage, and most people fold. Calm people ask one question: what happens if I wait? Usually the answer is nothing catastrophic, but waiting reveals information. It cools emotion. It exposes impulse. Speed hides consequences. Slowness reveals them. You have a choice. Fast feels good now. Slow pays later. Discipline chooses later. Here's something you need to accept. If you feel rushed, you are being pushed out of clarity. That doesn't mean the situation is wrong. It means your pace is. Slow the body first. Longer exhales. Relax the jaw. Drop the shoulders. Your nervous system sets the tempo. A calm body creates a calm mind. A rushed body creates a reactive one. Control the body. Control the mind. That's not philosophy, that's physiology. Here's a simple rule that changes everything. Never match chaos with speed. Chaos feeds on urgency. When you slow down, chaos loses traction. People around you may stay frantic. Let them. Your job is not to match energy. Your job is to lead it, and leadership is always slower than panic. Now let's address the fear underneath speed. Most people rush because they're afraid of silence. Silence feels exposed. It feels like weakness. It feels like losing control. But silence is not empty. Silence is space, and space is where disciplined responses are built. Calm people are comfortable with silence. That's why they seem confident. They don't rush to fill gaps. They don't rush to justify themselves. They don't rush to prove anything. They trust their timing. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't owe anyone immediate access to your thoughts. You don't need to respond just because someone expects it. That expectation is not authority. It's pressure, and pressure only works if you obey it. Here's a powerful practice. The next time you feel rushed, say this internally: speed is not required here. Say it again: speed is not required here. That sentence alone creates separation. It reminds you that urgency is optional, even in high-stakes moments, especially in high-stakes moments. Professionals slow down when it matters most. Surgeons don't rush. Pilots don't rush. Elite performers don't rush. They reduce errors by reducing speed. They know that precision dies in panic, so they breathe, they focus, they execute deliberately. Calm is not passive, it's controlled execution. You are not slowing down to avoid action. You are slowing down to act correctly. That's discipline. Let's make this practical. For the next week, practice intentional delay. Delay responses to non-urgent messages. Delay emotional replies. Delay decisions when emotion is high. Not forever, just long enough for clarity to return. Notice what happens. Notice how many urgent things resolve themselves. Notice how often your first impulse was wrong. Notice how much calmer you feel. That's training, and training changes defaults. Over time, slowing down becomes automatic. Your nervous system learns safety. Your mind learns patience. Your behavior becomes consistent. You stop feeling chased by life because you're no longer running. You've learned something critical now. Calm is not found by controlling the world. It's found by controlling your pace within it. Speed steals choice. Slowness restores it. You have a choice. Every moment asks the same question: will you rush or will you lead yourself? You've learned to pause. You've trained emotional control. You've reclaimed calm from people. You've learned to feel without obeying. You've faced pressure without panicking. Now you're ready to understand the truth most people never grasp. Calm is not just protection, it's power.
Chapter 7. Calm is the ultimate power move. Most people think power is loud. They think power dominates conversations, interrupts, asserts, pushes. That's not power. That's insecurity wearing armor. Real power is quiet, and calm is its most visible signal. That's the key. When you stay calm, you change the entire dynamic of a room without announcing anything. You don't argue for authority. You don't compete for attention. You don't chase control. You already have it. You have a choice. In every interaction, there is an emotional leader. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive, the most stable. People unconsciously sync to emotional tone. If you are frantic, tension spreads. If you are reactive, chaos multiplies. If you are calm, the room settles. That's influence, and influence is power. Think about negotiations. The person who talks the most is usually the weakest. They reveal urgency. They reveal insecurity. The calm person listens, pauses, allows silence to work. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and discomfort makes them fill space. They explain too much. They concede ground. They show their hand. The calm person doesn't rush to respond. They let silence apply pressure. That's the power move. It's not manipulation, it's restraint. You don't need their permission to be silent. You don't need approval to take your time. You don't need to match anyone's energy. Matching energy is for people without direction. Leading energy is for disciplined minds. Here's a truth most people miss. Calm unsettles insecure people because it removes leverage. They can't rush you. They can't provoke you. They can't read you easily, so they project. They say you're cold, detached, uninterested. What they really mean is, you didn't give me control. That's the key. Let's talk about respect. Respect is not demanded, it's observed. People respect those who don't need emotional validation. When you don't react, people listen. When you don't rush, people wait. When you don't explain yourself, people pay attention. Not because you're intimidating, because you're grounded. Calm signals self-command, and self-command is rare. That rarity creates authority. Here's a simple example. Two people receive criticism. One reacts immediately, defends, explains, argues. The other listens, asks a single clarifying question, responds later, clearly and briefly. Who looks stronger? Always the second, because strength is not speed, it's composure. It's not about ego, it's about discipline. Calm people don't chase dominance, they create gravity. People lean toward them, trust them, defer to them, not consciously, instinctively. Because the nervous system recognizes safety and control. And calm is the signal. You have a choice. You can seek power by force, or you can let calm do the work for you. Force exhausts. Calm compounds. Let's address a fear that comes up here. Many people worry that if they're calm, they'll be overlooked, ignored, steamrolled. That only happens when calm is paired with passivity. Calm is not passive. Calm is controlled assertion. You still speak. You still set boundaries. You still say no. You just don't do it emotionally. That's what makes it land. Emotion weakens messages. Clarity strengthens them.
Here's a powerful rule. Say less, mean more. Calm people don't over-explain. They don't justify endlessly. They don't plead their case. They state, they pause, they let it sit, and that pause forces others to process. That's power. Think about the calmest person you've ever met. They didn't rush, they didn't fidget, they didn't seek attention, but when they spoke, people listened. Why? Because their presence was regulated, their emotions were directed. That's discipline, and discipline is visible. Now let's get practical. The next time you're in a tense situation, try this. Lower your voice, slow your speech, reduce your words by half. Watch what happens. People lean in, the tone shifts, the pace changes. You didn't force anything, you led. That's the ultimate power move. You don't need their permission to take up space calmly. You don't need validation to be steady. You don't need noise to be effective. Calm is not weakness. Calm is the absence of need, and need is what gives others control over you. Here's the deeper truth. The calmest person in the room is the least controllable. They can't be rushed, they can't be baited, they can't be destabilized. That makes them dangerous in the best way. Not aggressive, not hostile, unshakable. That's what people respond to. And once you experience this shift, you won't go back. Because you'll feel it. The way people speak to you changes. The way they test you changes. The way they respect your boundaries changes. All because you stopped feeding chaos with emotion. You've learned something essential now. Calm is not just internal protection, it's external influence. It shapes rooms, it shapes outcomes, it shapes how people treat you. And it does all of this quietly. You've trained reaction, you've trained discipline, you've slowed down, you've faced pressure, you've reclaimed emotional authority. Now there's one final system you must build. Because calm should not be something you reach for only when things go wrong. It must be your default, your baseline, your identity. And that's where most people fail.
Chapter 8. Make calm your default, not your emergency response. Most people treat calm like a fire extinguisher. They only reach for it when everything is already burning. That's backwards. Calm is not an emergency response. It's a daily standard. That's the key. If you only practice calm during chaos, you won't have it when chaos arrives. Because calm under pressure is not created in the moment. It's revealed. You have a choice. You can live reactively, scrambling to regulate yourself when things go wrong. Or you can build calm so deeply into your routine that stress has nowhere to land. Calm must become your default setting, your baseline, the place you return to automatically. Most people never do this because it feels unnecessary until it's too late. They say, "I'm fine right now. I don't need to work on this today." And then life hits. Pressure, conflict, uncertainty, and they're unprepared. Calm people train when things are quiet. That's discipline. Let's be clear about something. Your nervous system does not understand intention. It understands repetition. You can want calm all you want. If you don't practice it daily, your body won't access it under stress. That's biology. So if your days are rushed, if your mornings are chaotic, if your habits are scattered, your default will be tension. Not because you're broken, because you trained it. That's the key. Calm defaults are built through structure, not motivation, not inspiration, structure. You don't wake up calm by accident. You don't stay calm randomly. You don't respond calmly when it matters without repetition. Here's where most people resist.
They think building calm means changing their personality. It doesn't. It means changing their patterns. Calm is trained through boring consistency. Same wake time, same breathing practice, same moments of intentional slowness. People skip this because it doesn't feel powerful, until they realize power is invisible at first. Here's a truth you need to hear. If your daily life is chaotic, your emotional life will be too. Messy inputs create messy outputs. Constant stimulation, endless scrolling, no silence. That environment trains reactivity. Calm people guard their inputs. They don't flood their nervous system and then act surprised when they feel overwhelmed. They choose quiet on purpose. They choose routines that regulate them, not because it's trendy, because it works. You have a choice. You can start your day in urgency, or you can start it in control. The first hour of your day sets the emotional tone for the next 12. Check your phone immediately, you train reactivity. Rush out the door, you train anxiety. Slow breathing, deliberate movement, intentional silence, you train calm. That's not self-care, that's discipline. Calm defaults are built in small moments. How you walk, how you eat, how you transition between tasks. Most people rush transitions. They jump from meeting to meeting, task to task, emotion to emotion. No reset. That accumulation creates volatility. Calm people reset constantly. Short pauses, deep breaths, mental check-ins. Not dramatic, not time-consuming, effective. Pause, breathe, choose, again and again. That's how calm becomes automatic. Let's talk about emotional hygiene. Just like physical hygiene, it's daily or it decays. You don't brush your teeth only when there's pain. You don't clean your body only when you're sick. You maintain it. Calm is the same. Daily decompression, daily silence, daily restraint. Without it, emotional clutter builds, and clutter always explodes under pressure. Here's a simple practice. At least once per day, do nothing stimulating. No phone, no music, no input. Just sit, breathe, observe. This trains your nervous system to tolerate stillness, and stillness is the foundation of calm. Most people avoid stillness because it feels uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort is the training. If you can be calm in stillness, you can be calm in chaos. That's the progression. You don't need their permission to slow your life down. You don't need approval to protect your baseline. You don't need to justify choosing regulation over stimulation. It's not about pleasure, it's about performance. Now let's be honest. If calm is not your default, you will leak emotion, in tone, in posture, in decision-making. People will feel it even if you say nothing. Calm defaults create consistency, and consistency creates trust. Others trust you more. You trust yourself more because you're not guessing how you'll react. You know. That certainty is freedom. Here's the discipline you commit to. Never let calm be optional. Not when things are easy, not when things are hard. Optional habits disappear under pressure. Non-negotiable habits survive. That's the key. Build calm into your mornings, into your workday, into your evenings, not as a reaction, as a rule. Over time, something changes. Stress still shows up, emotion still arises, but it doesn't stick. It passes through without leaving damage, because it has no foothold. You didn't suppress it, you out-trained it. That's mastery. You've now built calm internally. You've made it visible externally. You've made it habitual daily. Now there's only one piece left, your body. Because your body is not separate from your mind, and if your body is chaotic, your mind will follow.
Chapter 9. Your body trains your mind. Most people try to control their mind directly. They argue with thoughts, they wrestle emotions, they force positivity. And they fail. Because the mind does not lead first, the body does. That's the key. Your nervous system decides whether you feel calm or threatened long before logic gets involved. If your body is tense, your mind will be restless. If your breathing is shallow, your thoughts will race. If your posture is collapsed, your confidence will drop. This is not opinion, it's physiology. You have a choice. You can fight your mind endlessly, or you can train your body and let calm follow naturally. Calm people understand this instinctively. They don't wait to feel calm before acting calm. They act calm, and the feeling catches up. That's discipline. Let's start with breathing. Your breath is the fastest way to influence your emotional state. Short, shallow breaths signal danger. Long, controlled exhales signal safety. Your body listens immediately. Most people breathe like they're being chased all day, and then they wonder why they feel anxious. Calm people breathe deliberately. They slow the exhale. They expand the diaphragm. They create space. Here's a rule you will use for the rest of your life. Longer exhales equal lower stress. Inhale through the nose. Exhale slowly through the mouth. Again and again. You don't need a crisis to do this. You do it preventatively. That's training. Now, posture. Posture is not cosmetic, it's neurological. Slouched posture compresses the chest. Compressed chest restricts breathing. Restricted breathing increases stress. It's a chain. Calm people carry themselves upright, not rigid, but open. Shoulders back, head level, jaw relaxed. This posture signals confidence to the brain, and the brain responds. You don't need confidence to stand confidently. You stand confidently, and confidence follows. That's the discipline. Movement matters too. A stagnant body creates stagnant emotion. If you sit all day, your nervous system has nowhere to release energy, so it leaks as irritability, anxiety, restlessness. Calm people move daily, not to look good, to regulate. Walking, stretching, controlled strength. Movement tells your body, I can handle load. And a body that can handle load does not panic easily. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. 5 minutes done daily beats an hour done rarely. That's the key. Now let's talk about tension. Most people carry unconscious tension all day. Clenched jaw, tight shoulders, locked hips. That tension is stored emotion, and stored emotion will express itself, usually at the wrong time. Calm people scan their body regularly. They release what doesn't need to be held. Jaw, shoulders, hands. You relax them deliberately, not once, repeatedly. That's how calm becomes embodied. You're not trying to be calm, you're practicing regulation. There's a difference. Now let's address the excuse, I don't have time. That's not true. You don't need time, you need intention. You breathe anyway, you stand anyway, you move anyway. The question is whether you do it consciously. You have a choice. Every breath can train calm or reinforce stress. Every posture can signal safety or threat. Every movement can regulate or agitate. Your body is always training something. Make sure it's training calm. Here's a simple daily protocol. Slow breathing for 2 minutes. 1 posture check per hour. Some form of movement every day. That's it. Not complicated, not flashy, effective. Over time, your baseline shifts, your heart rate lowers, your reactions slow, your mind clears. Not because you forced calm, but because your body learned it. That's mastery. You've now trained reaction, discipline, pace, power, habit, body.
There is only one truth left to face. Calm is not restriction, it's freedom. And discipline is the price.
Chapter 10. Discipline is freedom. Most people think freedom means doing whatever they want. They think freedom is emotion unchecked, impulse obeyed, urgency obeyed. That's a trap. That's chaos disguised as liberty. True freedom is discipline. That's the key. You have a choice. You can live at the mercy of emotion, at the mercy of circumstance, at the mercy of other people, or you can master yourself. Discipline is the tool that gives you control, and control is freedom. Think about it. When you've trained calm, you can walk into conflict without panic. You can make decisions under pressure without fear. You can respond instead of react. That's freedom. Without discipline, you are a prisoner of your impulses, a hostage to every provocation, a victim of every distraction. Discipline is not restriction, it's permission. Permission to think clearly, permission to act deliberately, permission to live life on your terms. Here's the truth most people ignore. The more you control yourself, the less you are controlled by others. Every habit you enforce, every pause you take, every controlled breath, they add layers of freedom. Calm is not just a state, it is a fortress, and the only way to build that fortress is with repeated, relentless practice. You do not negotiate with your impulses. You do not ask permission from circumstances. You do not wait for the right moment. You take it. You enforce it. You live it. That is why calm people are unstoppable, because they don't need validation. They don't need permission. They don't react to chaos. They operate from mastery, from clarity, from freedom. Discipline is the price. Calm is the reward. You have trained this far. You have learned the tools. You have built the foundations. Now it is up to you. Every moment going forward is a test. Every provocation is an opportunity. Every stressor is a chance to choose freedom over chaos. The choice is yours. You have been given the map, the tools, the knowledge. The question is simple. Will you use it? Will you pause, breathe, choose, or will you continue to hand control of your mind and your life to others? Discipline is freedom. Calm is power, and it starts with a single decision: to act instead of react, to lead instead of follow, to own your mind no matter what happens. You've trained. Now go. Be disciplined. Be calm. Be free.
Staying calm is not about being passive, it's about being powerful. It's about choosing your response instead of being controlled by your reaction. It's about slowing down when others rush, thinking clearly when others panic, and staying grounded when emotions rise. Your feelings are real, but they are not your leader. Your discipline is.